This is Fitz's recruiting update. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Of course, all the Penn State football recruiting information you're going to want to know. That isn't going to be shoved into this roughly 10 minutes. You can get it at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Just $1 to sign up. We're in the middle of some of the most important weeks of the calendar for football recruiting, where the final leg of the 2026 class will be decided with some of the top prospects, which we're going to get to here in just 1 second. But I wanted to get that out of the way first. Fitz, lot going on this weekend. Let's start with the reaction to the official visits. I know you were working on that yesterday and today. So what has been from that particular group of players, which, to remind people, had a lot of defensive talent, potentially the number one defensive end in the nation, like one of the best defensive ends in the nation, and then maybe the number 2 defensive end in the nation, or however you want to frame that, we're on campus this past weekend. So what was the reaction to the official visits for those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's positive because it's official visit weekend. All those things are positive. I think it's an interesting an interesting situation nationally, because you look at a bunch of schools have had big visit weekends and people want fireworks after these things. And I get it. That's kind of how it's worked in the past. And I think it's a little bit different this year because you've got, the money aspect in play, and you've got guys who were able to wait this long and take official visits. If they've waited this long, why not take another one? Why not take another 2? I think things sort of turn the corner in the next week or 2, because you're going to start to see shuffling, and you're going to start to see sort of leverage back the other way. Schools sort of pressing on guys and leaning on guys because they're going to have limited spots. They're going to have limited money if other guys are taking those slots and things like that. So I think it's going to be a fascinating couple of weeks here as we turn the corner into June. Penn State's visit weekend, very heavy on defensive linemen. The 2 that jump out to you, Luke Wafel and Carter Meadows. I'm not sure which one you put in which situation, but both are really, really darn good prospects, and Penn State loves them both. I think they're in for both of those guys. I mean, I think that's been one where of course, Wafel, his older brother Owen, transferred to Penn State from Michigan in the offseason. And I think that he's going to consider Penn State till the end. He had a really good visit to Ohio State, a really good visit to Penn State. Is going to go to, I believe, Texas and USC to finish off the process, and then sort of sit down and shuffle up. And that's an interesting sort of breakdown of tiers when you talk about prospects. Like, some guys can afford to do that, others can't. And there's a sort of delineation there where you've got different timelines that are, they kind of force their hand. And I don't think Luke Wafel is one of them. I think he can take really as long as he wants to take. And that's kind of how Penn State's board is shaken out. You got 19 commitments right now in the class of 2026. And what's left? What's left is some darn good football players out there, man. Some really good prospects that are at the top of the board. Yes, they will be more expensive. They will be lower on the hit rate scale because of what Penn State is up against. But at the same time, it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. But I think another good visit for Luke Wafel. I think a really good visit for Carter Meadows. We have Carter Meadows really, really high in our On3 rankings. I think he was number 5 or 6 or something like that the last time I checked. He's been very high in those rankings, but a great fit for what Penn State likes to do. I still think Penn State and Michigan are the 2 schools that make a lot of sense here. Michigan's had a ton of success at Gonzaga. He's going to go out there next weekend, I believe it is. So Meadows was really impressed with what Penn State had to put on this weekend. And I think he got around Deion Barnes with I don't want to say for the first time. He's been around campus a few times, but for an extended period of time. And I think that's really what resonated with Carter Meadows and his family is, yeah, you can fit in here a couple hours from home and still accomplish everything you want to accomplish. I think it's come pretty hard and fast for him. Like, this is a guy that was in the 200s, I think it was. And then all of a sudden he's a top 10 player in the country by On3. And that brings with it challenges. That brings with it a lot of opportunities that they maybe didn't see coming. So this is a really interesting recruitment. I think Penn State's right in. His teammate Tyson Harley was on campus, Jackson Ford on campus, bunch of defensive ends, Damari Simeon and Keyshawn Stansel, the 2 defensive tackles that are sort of at the top of the board there, as well as Garrett Williamson from Alabama. So Deion Barnes, man, I hope you're getting a nap today or slept all day yesterday. I know you got young kids, but that's a heck of a weekend to put together for Deion Barnes.
Yeah, and to give the podcast audience a sense of Carter Meadows, if you aren't watching and seeing all the things we're putting up on the screen, he's the 6th overall player in the class of 2026, number 2 defensive end in the country as well. He's a full 6'6", 225, super lean, one of those guys who can grow into a complete defensive end. And after watching his film, a really good run defender for his size. And I say his size meaning 220 pounds in high school with that frame, guy that plays the run really well. The pass rushing development, you're going to bet on the length and the development. And that's, I think, the big thing is finding a place for him that's going to develop those tools and make him into that complete player. On the other hand, Luke Wafel brings a lot of things to the table already. They're I don't want to use the overused term. They're two sides of the same coin, but they both bring elite tangibles and elite intangibles to the table. And it feels like Penn State in a good situation to maybe get one of them. We'll see. Like I know you just said, like a lot of these things have yet to play out, and there's going to be that pinching in the next couple of weeks. Were there other players that caught your attention from the players that visited outside of the highlights, or maybe some of the other guys that we've already talked about here on the show?
Yeah, LaSalle offensive tackle Grayson McHugh is a guy that we've talked about for a long time on here as a top target for Penn State. Very important in-state guy. Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas is in there as well. Those are, I mean, that's a huge one right there, right? You look at what Penn State's got on the offensive line, and T. Frank, you said it on the show last week. They don't have the tackles that they've brought in the last couple of cycles. Not that they have bad players or anything like that, but
Right.
like the guys that are 6'7", pushing 6'8", long, athletic, lean guys. Grayson McHugh is one of those guys, and then they offered another this weekend in Charlie Thom from Connecticut. This is a reclassed prep school guy. He came to mini camp the other day and sort of blew it out of the water in terms of the athletic testing numbers. So you think Garrett Sexton, you think Egan Boyer even more. In terms of those guys that have that big, long frame that you can sort of mold into an offensive tackle. So you said it, and they got a couple of those guys on campus this weekend. And it's going to be interesting to see how those play out.
So you mentioned that 7-on-7 camp. Just a quick recap of that. We saw Kevin Brown there, which if you want to go check out his performance, we have that at bluewhiteillustrated.com, also on social media. He is 6'5", 270 of lean muscle. He looks like a running back. Everything he was doing in person was just super impressive. Then
What
we get to
what did Gerald McCoy have to say about that? Your new buddy Gerald McCoy.
yeah, my new best friend. So there was this interesting internet discussion of a tweet I put out of Kevin Brown doing pass sets, and somebody, I think there was somebody who doesn't actually know anything about football but has a large following, retweeted and said that he's small and that he's got to convert to tight end. There are no college tight ends that are like high level combo athletes, receivers that are 6'5", 270. Like you look at what even last year, Tyler Warren was 6'5", 258. Like as a senior, as a guy who developed into that. So then Gerald McCoy said, don't worry, you can put weight on a frame like that, and he'll develop into what they want him to, which Penn State has one of the best strength training programs in the country. If there's one thing you shouldn't be concerned about, it's a guy who has the desire to be good and is as good as he is now, putting in the work physically and mentally, because he was unbelievably good in those drills. Like you watch a lot of these guys, and comparatively, he made the rest of them look really bad at football. But also, Kevin Brown's got a dad that played in the NFL. He's taken to this coaching, and he's taken to the training. There's really not a whole lot you're worried about in terms of his projection to the next level. We also got a chance to see at prospect camp on Sunday a lot of different players. Penn State brought in a lot of their committed players for 2026. You followed a lot of the D-line players. We got to see the beginning of things as well together. So what stood out to you from Sunday, whether it was those committed players or maybe some guys that weren't committed that you thought were interesting?
Saw Daryl Carey for the first time in terms of in action. I thought he was impressive. He's a long, lean safety. Just you knew the size was listed there, and this what you don't really see a ton of these 6'2" safeties and think that they can really translate that, but I think Daryl Carey can. You saw him turn and run. The hands are, he's a defensive prospect, so that happens. But I think there's a lot to like with Daryl Carey. I think he's going to continue to rise as he sort of rounds out as an athlete. Like this is there's a lot of potential there. I was really impressed with Daryl Carey. And then I was down with the offensive and defensive linemen. And a couple weeks ago at Under Armour, I saw Roseby Lubintis for the first time, and it was not pretty. Like it was a situation where he was really, really struggling. And I think he has worked with Phil Troutwine now 2 or 3 times in the time since, and there's improvement there. And you don't always see that. And I think that that's a positive thing with the offense, or with that big offensive lineman. I think he's still got to drop weight. I mean, he's like 350 right now, so that's a lot of poundage there for a guy that I think is probably going to be a guard. Penn State sees him as a tackle. I think he's probably a guard. But like market improvement with the way that he has settled down and sort of learned to settle into the game. So I was encouraged by that. Alex Haskell was there working, and Matthew Lamont was there as well. So it was a good performance for those guys. And hey, they're in a camp / combine setting with other prospects. You should expect them to stand out. They should stand out. If you're going to go to Penn State, they're standing out. I did not get to see, as you put these clips up, I did not get to see Jasir Rogers in person all that much. Saw a little bit of him, saw enough of him. You know my feelings on Jasir Rogers, number 180 in the on 300, and I think he can be higher than that. I think he's a damn good wide receiver prospect. Penn State hasn't had one of those with that combination of not just speed, because he's run a 4.3, etc. But like the ability to separate, the ability to track the ball, the ability to do some special things as a wide receiver. Typically you get one or the other. And it seems like Penn State's gotten both of those in Jasir Rogers. I'm excited to see him continue to blossom before he gets to college.
Yeah, he was as advertised. There was one play where, and of course, I couldn't get my phone up in time because I was trying to do 2 things at once. He made a guy fall over. Like you talk about, like breaking ankles. The poor DB actually fell over, and then I think he ran a route to kind of like, what's the point of just keep running and get the rep? I think he tried to run a route that would get him, something out of it, and it came back and did like almost a contested play, but he still caught the ball. Focused through the catch point, also great. You mentioned tracking the ball, tempoing his routes, all those things. It was just it was fun to watch.
His ability to stop, start, and accelerate is just you don't see that very often. And I think I'm one of those guys that you look at a ton of prospects and say this guy's rated too high just because I think of the holes that are in that game, and I think this guy's rated too low because he's a darn good prospect. And hey, on 3 is ahead of everybody in that one. Like I think I firmly believe they're going to catch up. He's a 3-star in the industry rankings right now, but we have him pretty, I think, higher than anybody, and it's not close. The more that he continues to get out there, I think the more cases for him to continue to fly up those boards. And whether Penn State wants it or not, I think it's going to happen.
We're going to get to more on Thursday on the recruiting show. Couldn't even get to all the things that I had planned to talk about today because there's so much going on, and all these things are very important, one stacked on top of the other. One last thing I do want to mention, though, for those people who are following along, we haven't really talked about this a lot on the show. It's been more over on the site. The integration of Rivals, I think, is officially happening on July 1st. So the Rivals profiles are going to be updated with the On3, kind of the guts and the workings of the On3 branding. Shannon Terry, the founder of On3, he's got more of that stuff for you on social media. So if you want to follow him on X, previously known as Twitter, you can get some of that information there.